Alright, close up on the Band-Aid from work. It's a very dangerous job. I work with a lot of paper and I get a lot of paper cuts because of that. But, close up, yeah. There we go. Anyway, not gonna start this video with a okay so or okay guys or just using the word okay for an intro. Anyway, my house is probably about to get real loud, like hills loud. Because we got lots going on today. It is Sunday, the Sabbath, a family day, and I think we're going to start our day, well, it's like 12 noon, but really kick off our day by having the grandkids over. So, anyway. Usually these videos, basically take you along with my online class, English class, experience, journey, whatever. Usually they're like 20-ish minutes. Just under a half hour. One I did have to break up into, I want to say 3 parts. I believe it was 3 parts. Sorry about that. Don't know if you're interested in this series at all. Basically, I just talk about my English class. I got my sweats on. I'm an online student right now. I can be lazy, don't have to show my face in class. There is no face-to-face class. We don't even have online group chats or meetings or anything. I mean, there's like discussion boards and interactions that way. But it's real nice. So, this past week, my hair's still a little wet, and it's been crazy today. Late shower, slept in, blah blah blah. But yes. So, a slower week, a quieter week. Yes, there was a final draft, a final paper basically due. I thought it was due Tuesday. Basically, the due dates are Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Whereas before it was like you get Wednesday, Friday, Saturday due dates for assignments. But this class is very different. I've never had Tuesday due dates, I don't think. So I do like that. Kind of get it out of the way, but it can be kind of stressful sometimes, like with work and everything now. But anyway, so fun fact, funny story. So I found out that this big paper was due on Wednesday the 20th, right? Whereas I had thought it was due the day before, Tuesday the 19th. So I was freaking the frack out on Tuesday and I was like, oh, I'm tired, just got home from work, early day, not the best sleep, blah blah blah. But it was all good, it was okay. So that was fun. Turned it in few hours before it was due, before my bedtime, which is now early on work nights. Anyway, so we're just gonna go to the first thing that was due this past week, week 5, and it's basically for just over like 3 pages, my paper. So Duchess, have to use quotes so I don't stutter. This helps me not stutter. It's weird. And then woman, women, also a hard word for me, so I might just switch out those words or put like insert word here because the stutter annoys me and it must annoy you guys. Don't know if you can relate. But yeah. Oh, by the way, so we were in these 2 books. Criticism, short guide, basically. We're mostly in this book, I would say. Well, I guess it depends. Yeah, we haven't really dove too deep in the other book. I don't remember reading out of there at all. But yeah, hopefully I don't get caught for this. Well, not caught, that's the wrong word, but it's just like, I hope and pray that my teacher doesn't know about this, my channel, especially this series, because I do tend to not take too many notes all the time, if at all. Sometimes I skim read, I don't have time to really dive deep or take notes, and so there was one reading assignment this week where I just skim read. Hopefully I don't get an F for that if she knows about this. I mean, everybody does it from time to time, especially if you got crazy work schedules and a crazy busy life. But anyway, so let's just begin. So let's get into the analysis. And the poem is called My Last Duchess, you know. So I'm kind of critiquing this poem, focusing on sexism and love. And this is kind of sort of a risky topic and paper, so I'm not sure about my teacher's feedback yet. her comments, her thoughts. I don't know what my grade is going to be like. This was like 100 points. So we'll just see how it goes. English teachers, they can tend to rip your work apart, and hello dog, hello rabbit, have to say hi to everyone. Anyway, so it can be hard as a person who loves to write, a person who loves English, you know, but it's whatever. Okay, so in his poem, Robert Browning teaches his audience about sexism versus love. This is a poem about one man's obsession with a woman to the point where he belittles her more than belittles her, turning her into an object, being controlling of her, and being emotionally abusive in this relationship. Can there be sexism in love? Did the Duchess die by sexism? These questions can be shown and answered throughout the poem in the form of diction as well as characterization. The character expresses not his love for, but rather his desire for his former Duchess throughout the poem, being sexist in his view of, thoughts about, and interactions with this woman. A quote, "My favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west." After describing the painting, one of the first things that the character says about his former Duchess involves being intimate with her. She is an object to him. Just this or that, another quote. "And you disgust me, here you miss or there exceed the mark." He is also easily disgusted by his former Duchess, and he doesn't want her to go outside of what he wants from her. He is controlling. Another quote. "This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together." The way in which he interacts with her is affecting her greatly to the point where she becomes miserable. She is suffering from an abusive relationship. This poem is about false love, fake love. The so-called love the character in this poem has for his former Duchess is on the side of obsession, and it is twisted and distorted. The character's thought process is stuck in my favor. Quote, "He lusts after this woman, and he expects her to be the kind of woman he wants. He wants perfection according to his desire." The character in the poem My Last Duchess lusts instead of loves and practices sexism in love. Quote, "My favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west." Robert Browning uses the word favor just once in his poem. However, this is a strong word and one that describes his character very well. It is interesting that the word favor is only used in one place, but even more interesting that this word is used in a sentence remarking about how the character is sexually attracted to his last Duchess's physical features. It is not her personality that draws him. It is not her beautiful heart, soul, and mind that he favors. No, it is her appearance that he admires. A man is not a gentleman, nor is he a true man, when he sees a woman and all he sees is a woman. A man who sees women as equals and as more than just an attractive body is a true man, and the man Robert Browning speaks of in his poem is not a true man. The Duke favors the Duchess for her body, my favor at her breast. The Duke is interested in the Duchess because he finds her attractive and she is someone who he can control. People are people before they are bodies. A woman is a person before she is a woman. To interpret, a person is a human being with human emotions and valid feelings. A person is not just their gender. Gender is a part of what makes a person, well, them, but it is not all of who they are. The Duke hardly sees his Duchess as human. He doesn't acknowledge that she has feelings. Perhaps the Duke is physically or sexually abusive in this relationship. It is obvious that he is very much attracted to this woman's physical body. If he lusts after her this way, it is highly possible and likely that he is abusive in this area of their relationship. Readers of the poem can infer that the Duke is a sexist. He views his Duchess as less than, and her physical appearance is more important to him than anything else about her. The Duke's obsession with the Duchess's looks and his lack of interest in her well-being is one thing that greatly contributed to the death of the Duchess. Another quote, "Just this or that and you disgust me, here you miss or there exceed the mark." Robert Browning's male character in this poem may admire the Duchess's physical appearance, but he loathes her personality and very being. He does not want her to exceed his expectations, and his expectations do not include her being herself and showing her feelings or personality. He wants everything to do with being intimate with her and everything to do with her being his, much like property, but he wants nothing to do with who she is as a person. He does not want to get to know her past her appearance. The Duke says, "That and you disgust me, and here you miss." By using the word you, the Duke is addressing his Duchess, essentially speaking directly to her, though this speech is directed towards the painting of his former Duchess. "Here you miss, or there exceed the mark." Quote, this statement acts as a warning. The Duke is telling the Duchess that she had better not do less than or more than he expects of her. This disgusts him. The fact that she acts for herself and is her own person bothers the Duke, annoys him greatly. Disgust is a strong word, and one that the Duke uses to describe his Duchess. Disgust is defined as disapproval. The Duke disapproves of who the Duchess is, although he approves of her appearance, and that and only that is all that seems to matter to the Duke. Usually when a person is disgusted by something, they avoid it, or it causes them a very unpleasant reaction, physical or mental. In the case of being disgusted by a person, the Duke tries to change his Duchess. He doesn't like when she is being herself. He wants her to be his. He wants her to be the kind of Duchess that he approves of. Disgust also killed the Duchess, or there exceed the mark. Quote, the Duke expects that the Duchess not go beyond his expectations. It is going beyond the limit that the Duke has created for the Duchess. Dangerous expectations can kill, and they did so with the Duchess. Another quote, this grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. The character Robert Browning created and focused on for this poem gave commands. He used controlling and threatening behavior towards his Duchess. He was suffocating her with his commands. His commands grew. The Duchess found herself miserable, and then more and more miserable, and it was all because of a controlling and cruel and sexist man. There is not emotional abuse in true love, but rather there's kindness, and Robert Browning's character commanding his Duchess is not kind nor loving. There she stands as if alive. Quote, these words directly follow the line in the poem speaking of the Duke's, I had to make sure the camera light wasn't turned off. These words directly follow the line in the poem speaking of the Duke's commands developing and increasing. The audience can surely acknowledge the last Duchess has since deceased. I'm so scared I'm gonna see an error or something won't make sense or it won't read right, But anyway, I'm too late, already submitted it. Has since deceased. It is interesting to note that these words follow the part of the poem that announces how the Duke was controlling towards his Duchess. It can be assumed that one thing that killed the Duchess was the Duke's commands and expectations. This is a poem about one man's dislike for a woman, yet obsession with the fact that she is a woman. The Duke is attracted to the Duchess's physical beauty, yet doesn't want to get to know who she is as a person. He dislikes who she is or who she is not. He dislikes the person he thinks she is or the person he thinks she is not. When a person speaks to someone they love, they do so with love. Lovers can be light-hearted and teasing in their humor together just as family and friends. However, the relationship that the Duke has created with his Duchess ignores speaking with lightheartedness and teasing. It is commanding. Robert Browning's audience can presume that it was the Duke who killed the Duchess. He commanded her to death. He gave commands. She did not give him the results he wanted, and he did away with her, anxious to find another woman to abuse his power over. Last paragraph, we made it. Horrifically, my mom helped me find a good word to start the paragraph. There is sexism in this world. However, there should not be sexism in love, romance, or relationships. My Last Duchess is a poem about how one man ruins himself and a woman because of obsession and sexism. Robert Browning tells the story of a sexist man who favors a woman's physical appearance over her personality and her very being. Robert Browning tells the story of a sexist man who is frustrated when a woman exceeds his expectations of what he thinks a woman should be. Oh no, it says she be. A woman, she be. There's a mistake. No. Expectations of what he thinks a woman should be, which is to be an object and not much else. Robert Browning tells the story of a sexist man whose commands towards a woman grew to the point where she became miserable, this being emotional abuse and emotional scarring. In addition, he thinks this woman his property even. Robert Browning is telling his audience a story of sexism and abuse in relationships that should change opinions and influence perspectives on what true love and attraction should be. One mistake, it was minor, but it felt like it was major. And then Works Cited just listed the poem, you know, like the link, whatever. And so yeah. Just a little interesting. So I italicized the words favors, exceeds, and also, where did it go? Grew. So basically, favors appearance, exceeding expectations, growing commands. So yeah, I like that topic. I'm a feminist, not a feminazi. My name used to be not Emily Euphoria, but Feminine M. And yeah, so I believe that sexism is unfair and should die, and that being a female in this world is important and valid, and it's a part of who we as girls are, but it's not all of us, and we are more than just like body parts, you know, like just because I have curves, well, I don't, but you know, symbolically speaking, I guess, doesn't mean I'm less than or inferior or whatever, insert a ramble here, but let's just move on. So another poem is going to be Everyday Use by Alice Walker. Have the link there to that poem, so that's fun, and I'll have to remember to go to that. That's going to be another giant paper a few weeks down the road, and we'll see if we're still going and if we're too long. If I'm too long. Okay. Not horrendous or horrific, as the poem stated. Hair flip. Okay. So basically, let's see here. We have check. Basically like 3 more kind of thoughts. Or maybe it's just 2. No, it is 3. Okay. So I just got some definitions regarding Marxist. Is that how you pronounce it? Marxist literary criticism. Still can't even say that, which is embarrassing. So just responses. So 2 thoughts regarding this topic of like Marxism or something. So materialism is an overly reliant perspective on physical things. Dialectical, I think, materialism can be similar to the definition of materialism as well. This is when the economy, politics, and society in general, along with the history thereof, is all negatively affected by material goods / material needs. It goes outside of just materialism. It changes the very structure of an economy and nature of a people or society. Materialism is focused on the wanting of things, while dialectical materialism is more regarding the need thereof. So don't know how valid or true or right that paragraph is. This was just a quiz after a reading that I skimmed over. That was cool, right? So don't know about that. And then this is a quote from someone, forget who, but consciousness does not determine life. Life determines consciousness. That word's hard for me too. Just like, what is it? Self-conscious? I don't know. Anyway, so I believe this statement to mean that we are more than just chance, more than just life. Yes, we do indeed and quite obviously need a conscious to be considered alive and a living, breathing human being. However, to live in this life and to survive and thrive and prosper, you must have and contain a certain conscious. You need certain smarts about yourself. You will need a solid perspective to live this life. And not to mention this world, this life, it will shape your conscience. It has the potential to change you. You just have to let it. And you have to let yourself grow. This should be consciousness. So again, don't know how those thoughts come across, if they are correct, if correct can be the right word to use. Don't even know if those words, those paragraphs were the right words to use, but I tried. Now this, just a few thoughts paragraphs. So, and this just says, please note, I think this might be too unique of an idea, but just wanted to share anyway. So this is actually a short story, which is called The Short Happy Life of Frances Macomber, is I think how you pronounce the last name. Macomber, Hakuna Matata. Okay, so this is basically where you read the short story, and I skimmed it, of course. I read like half of it, and I ran out of time, and it was bedtime, and whatever. I think bedtime now. Weird. But okay, so this is by Ernest Hemingway. And I save these links and these copies and these like files, these docs, so many words, of the reading assignments, like the short stories and the poems, so I can always go back to them. Because I'm a nerd and I want to, and I find them interesting and whatever. And when I don't have time, it's nice to have that as an option. So anyway, you just create a thesis after you read this. Okay. So for a thesis, this is mine, but it's kind of out there and it might be bizarre. So Ernest Hemingway's The Short Happy Life of Frances Macomber tells the story of how high society class, social standing, and wealth affects a person's independence, ability, and even bravery or lack thereof. So now getting into the paragraphs, technically there's two. So a question to ask regarding Marcus theory could be this. Would Margot, I think that's how you pronounce the name, it's like Mar and then G-O-T, is the T silent? No. So would she, this is the wife of Frances, have had the same reaction to her husband's bolting like a rabbit if she had come from a different background, such as one of poverty? Does her wealth and status in society have anything to do with the way she views her husband and how she thinks he should be? That is, to be brave and face a lion, symbolically and literally. Margot asks her husband if he is scared of facing the lion again, to which the man answers, of course not, but I'm nervous from hearing him roar all night. Then Margot replies with, you'll kill him marvelously. I know you will. I'm awfully anxious to see it. Margot seems to look down upon her husband, especially for his interaction with the lion. She does this while praising and respecting their guide, Wilson. Frances Macomber wished that he had the courage to tell Wilson that he didn't want anything more to do with the lion. That phrase and the usage of the word courage in the sentence seems contradictory, but interesting. He was not feeling brave on this journey with the lion, and it would seem cowardly to back out. Excuse me. And yet he wished for courage to say something like, no, I don't want to because I'm afraid. Now to continue. Some people appear to have everything handed to them. Some may say that they get whatever they want. It might seem like they haven't worked a day in their life. Perhaps wealthy Frances Macomber is this way, in a way. Perhaps if Macomber grew up poor, he would have been forced to grow up in harsher conditions and situations, making him braver and more able to endure. Another question to ask, sorry, I'm playing with my hair. That's a question to ask. Like, why do you play with your hair so much? Another question to ask, if Marxism made it so that there are no classes and all are equal and of equal wealth, then would all people not be afraid to get their hands dirty? Would all people work the same amount, which would allow them the same opportunity to grow and push themselves and become able to endure? There would be no poor nor rich. Spoiled generations could cease altogether. If this were so, would Francis have been braver on this journey and in his interactions with the lion? If he had grown up differently and grown up taught to work hard, would he have acted differently around the lion? So yeah, those are some thoughts. And I don't know if they make sense, but okay. Moving on. Got those, and then just this last thing, I believe. Pretty quiet, soft, easy week, I would say. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, so just this. Okay, so this guy right here has 1, 2, 3, basically like 4 pages. Okay, so this was in this book. Yes, this was in, my bookmark went crazy. My bookmark went crazy. There, now it's better. Chapter 7 on feminism, which again is an interesting topic to me because I'm a girl and I'm a feminist and whatever. So, in the book, Literary Criticism, An Introduction to Theory and Practice, 5th edition by Charles E. Beresler, I think. Let's just go. So, little side note, I am a feminist, first of all. You know this, I just said this. Impressive to me how these quotes and people come from years and years ago. It's hard for me to say the word woman or women. It's kind of sad considering that I am one and I can't even really say what I am, but okay. So a quote from Simone, I think, de Beauvoir, I don't know. This is 1949. To emancipate, is that how you say it? Woman is to refuse to confine her to the relations she bears to man. And then from Hillary Rodham Clinton, it's sad, and this was said in the book, basically it's sad that she felt the need to say this in the 21st century, but just it's important to get it across too. So it is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights. Very true, I would say. So just some interesting things. Feminist studies, feminist theories, feminist critics. I think those are very interesting things to note. So as one of the most significant developments in literary studies in the second half of the 20th century, enunciate, feminist literary criticism advocates equal rights for all women, indeed all peoples, in all areas of life, socially, politically, professionally, personally, economically, aesthetically, and psychologically. Focusing on patriarchy, the rule of society and culture by men, and then I'll just spell it PHALLOCENTRISM. And it has the little red squiggle, which means it's not a word or it's spelled wrong. That's how they spell it. I don't know. The belief that identifies, I guess, phallus, as the source of power in culture and literature with its accompanying male-centered and male-dominated patriarchal assumptions. Quote from Plato. Plato thanks the gods for two blessings, that he had not been born a slave and that he had not been born a woman. And that's very sad, but I can see that, you know. Now a quote from Thomas Aquinas, whatever. Woman is really an imperfect man, an incidental being, whatever, a botched male. And that's very strong and very sad. Now a quote, this is Hamlet by Shakespeare. It's good that Shakespeare didn't say that. At least he didn't say this. It was just his character. But technically he did say it. But I would still respect Shakespeare if, this was his actual thought and he didn't, share this thought through a character of his. Anyway. Frailty, thy name is woman. That's sad. The roots of prejudice against women have long been embedded in Western culture, discrimination that male are superior and female the inferior. Century after century, male voices continue to articulate and determine the social role and cultural and personal significance of women. Some definitions, some things and stuff. Amazon feminism, dedicated to female images, either fictional or real, in literature and art that emphasize the physiques of female athletes and physical equality of both males and females. Cultural feminism asserts that personality and biological differences exist between men and women. Eco-feminism, sometimes spelled ECO-feminism, assumes that patriarchal societies are relatively new and that society's original condition, or dubbed the feminist Eden, was matriarchal, I think. Separatist feminism advocates separation from men, either total or partial, like lesbians, which I find kind of interesting. Then there are third world feminism, post-colonial feminism, etc. I just don't have notes on that. Disturbingly, words. I wanted to use that word in this quote. I didn't want to leave that out. That's the word that they use. So Adrienne Rich's words, they encapsulate the essence of feminism or feminist criticism. It is feared, it is problematic, and it has the ability and the transformative power to reshape our world. So if girls